And of course, to begin, let's bring in our correspondent, Kate Fisher, because I'm certain, I mean, when you saw a US president with those printouts, one would have even thought at that moment that South Africa would have come in handy with some of these statistics. But let's wrap this for you and bring in Kate Fisher. Kate, of course, you were watching that particular exchange, and there will be mixed reaction because when you look at, for example, the beginning, it seemed that things were going quite well. And then as the meeting kind of, the interaction kind of continued, it does seem like you have a Donald Trump who says he's not made up his mind, but at the same time, it sounds like he's made up his mind.
That's right. This meeting began really, I thought, very well for South African President Cyril Ramaphosa. He went straight in on the charm offensive, saying to Donald Trump how much he liked the decor changes he'd made to the Oval Office, giving him a book showcasing South Africa's golf courses, thanking him for all the help the US government gave during the COVID epidemic, sending respirators to South Africa. And it seemed like things were going really quite well. Also, Mr. Ramaphosa very kind of calm and confident. But then out of nowhere, Donald Trump began to play this video, which seemed to be news clips or a documentary. We don't know where it's from, who made it, what the source was. Which showed some of the minority party, and not as Cyril Ramaphosa then tried to explain to Donald Trump the representation of the South African government, or indeed the majority of the South African population. But really, Donald Trump didn't give the South African president much chance to respond to this. We know from people inside the room that most of the South African delegation looked very surprised by this video being played. It seems to have come as something of an ambush. But President Ramaphosa did not, as some were concerned he would do, respond as President Zelensky did back in February when he got angry in the White House about things he believed were being said that weren't true about his country. Mr. Ramaphosa sat calm, did not respond angrily, tried to talk about what the reality on the ground in South Africa actually is, to try to explain to President Trump. As you said, when he was asked about what will you do to convince President Trump about what is actually the truth, he said, look, if there was any genocide occurring in my country, these three members would not be here with me, pointing to members of his delegation, including, of course, his agriculture minister, who is white and also wants to explain to Donald Trump what the reality on the ground is. He was very calm. He tried to explain using facts and figures when he was allowed to speak about how, in fact, the majority of the victims of crime in South Africa are black. He didn't deny there was not a criminality problem. And he also used that as an opportunity to say, look, Mr. President, that is why we need your help to boost the economy, to get people to have more jobs so that crime is less of a problem in our country. But he wasn't given much chance to speak. And Donald Trump seemed really to want to keep repeating these conspiracy theories that he has read and been told without allowing President Ramaphosa to try to have any comeback on that.
And that's the thing, right, Kate, especially when you think about the fact that this is a man who seems to have made up his mind. And even when he played that particular video, even when he's being told that this is, this is basically an opposition party, a leader of an opposition party, but he's made up his mind. And then when the question comes up to say, after all of this, and you are able to possibly iron out your differences, what then does the future look like and your investment looks like? But you get a sense that this is a Donald Trump who's essentially saying, I don't know, we'll see. And then you listen to Elon Musk's name coming up, as well as how Starlink is, of course, now, as we heard from Johan Rupert there, needed in South Africa.
Yeah, it's very hard to see where these two men will go from here, given those extraordinary scenes, frankly. But Cyril Ramaphosa did said, you know, we need to talk about this away from the eyes of the media. He was, I think, really hoping to be able to speak to Donald Trump without reporters and cameras in the room, and he will be hoping at that point he will be able to clearly spell out what is actually happening on the ground in South Africa. And as he said, get other members of his delegation to explain it. So it's not just the president explaining it, but it is white members of his government. It is golfers, South African golfers, of course. I don't think golf has been mentioned as much in the Oval Office perhaps ever in history. There was a lot of talk about golf. This is one thing the two men can find in common, and clearly President Ramaphosa hoping that those golfing stars will be able to perhaps persuade Donald Trump, explain where he is having trouble getting the message across. He's hoping that they can deliver that. And in terms of Elon Musk, he was there in the Oval Office listening to all of this, and of course he is one of the people we think is likely to have told Donald Trump some of these conspiracy theories. Donald Trump said, oh, you know, Elon Musk is here not for this, he's here to talk about how to launch rockets from South Africa. So that suggests as well that there is still some way of getting some trade and some deals involved, because that's what Donald Trump said Elon Musk was there for initially.
All right, Kate Fisher, thank you so much for that update. And that's SABC News correspondent Kate Fisher live for us in Washington.